You're listening to the Today's Eden podcast, episode 36. This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. Wow, so normally I try to come on here and say something witty, say something funny, and make this episode sound like something that you really need to listen to. Unfortunately, today I feel like this episode was made for me to listen to. And it's crazy because I had recorded this episode with Jackie Hooks weeks ago, and I just find it really fascinating that in this time and place that I'm at in my life right now, that I would have to do this episode today. Yesterday, my husband and I had to say goodbye to our third baby. We hadn't told anybody really about it yet. We were waiting until we were, past that mark of 14 weeks when, they say it's safe to share the news and everything should be good from here. But it was yesterday that at between 8 and 9 weeks that we had a miscarriage, and we had to say goodbye to our baby. And so I think that with this story, if you have experienced a loss of your child, know that it's okay to fall apart. Know that it's okay to let things fall apart. Know that it's okay to not do all the things and to let your world just be shaken for a while, to not worry about jumping back into life and being that perfect mom and doing all those things, because I'm learning from Jackie that I can't right now. I just can't. And it's really hard to think about doing all the things again right now. And so I really encourage you, if you've lost a child or experienced a loss, or maybe you've had a friend who has experienced a loss, to really listen to this episode. And so for the next few episodes that you guys are going to hear in the coming weeks, I either didn't know I was pregnant, or it was recorded earlier when I knew, but everything was okay. And so I just don't want you to go into it confused with what I'm saying or how I'm responding, because, things just happened yesterday. And so the recordings are a little behind on what's happening in my real life. Yeah, I'll just let Jackie do her thing. Hey, Jackie, I am so excited to finally get to talk to you and to have you on my podcast and kind of get to know you actually while interviewing you. So I'm really excited about this and really excited to have you on to share your story and just some wisdom with us. So thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm super excited to be here too. I'm so glad that we were connected with each other. So fire away. I would love to hear what just all your thoughts and all your questions. So yes, absolutely. Excited to be here.
Well, before we get started, just so to give the listeners an idea of who you are and kind of what life looks like for you right now, could you share a few things about what season you guys are in and, maybe how many children you have and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that sounds great. So my husband and I have been together for 20 years. I'm 41 years old, so I fit that dynamic in some ways. I have a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old, Jake and Jude. Those are my two oldest. They're both in middle school. I have a 10-year-old who is in 5th grade. Her name is Grace. So we have middle school and elementary. And then when I was almost 40, we surprisingly and accidentally, and all those great words that you can use to describe being shocked to all get out, found out that we were pregnant with our son, Joshua. So I have a 4-year-old also. So I'm also stuck in the hell that is known as preschool with a 4-year-old. So I have basically 14 to 4 are my age groups. And so and 20 years of marriage under my belt. So we have been together for 18 years, married, and then we were together for 2 years before that. And so we have this crazy space in our life where we have moved into a pretty comfortable part of marriage that is also sometimes pretty boring. We're living life in the middle of life, which is to say that we are no longer in the fun part that is the beginning where everything's exciting, and we're nowhere near the end. We are in the really long and hard trenches of the middle of life. I totally get why people have midlife crisis now. And then at the same time, we have this 4-year-old who I dropped off this morning for his first day of preschool. So we have this crazy dynamic in our life. And I always tell people, if they want to feel good about themselves and their parenting, stop by my house unannounced at 4 p.m. any day of the week, and you will watch like a really horrible nightmarish circus takes place, where I try to get 3 kids to do homework and 1 to possibly just stare at electronics and be quiet long enough so we can maybe do all things and go to practices and make dinner. And so literally, if you ever want to feel good about yourself, Ashley, just stop on by at 4. Don't tell me. And you will hear possible screams coming from the outside. And you might turn around and walk away. You might be like, this house sounds like a nightmare. And it will be, because it is the Hooks house at 4 p.m.
Yeah, no, we're exactly the same. And I think that I thought that, when they all went to, their school during the day and stuff, that all that me time would give me this like unbreakable like patience level that when they got home, like, but it doesn't. I don't know if it makes it worse or if it makes it better, because having, silence and being able to do all my things. And then when they come home and just like shake that up real quick, like then I'm like, okay.
I think it just is the acknowledgement that all moms hand to other moms, and every once in a while dads do too, but being a mom is really hard. And I think sometimes if you are a working mom, juggling that whole thing of working and having kids and trying to get all things accomplished while they're at school, and then come home and be 100% a mom when they walk through those doors, it is a juggle that no one can do perfectly. We hope to do it decently, and that's just really the space I've been able to land in the last 2 years of my life. Before that, I was the mom that did everything perfectly. I had my life broken down into 10 and 15-minute increments, and I used every moment efficiently, and I did everything well. And we had a pretty big event that took place in our life in January of 2016, and it changed everything. It changed the way I look at my life. So yes, I am embracing the absolute imperfection of my world these days.
Yeah, and I think I was creeping on your social media accounts earlier before this interview, and I think it was your Instagram or something, but it was like talking about something about your husband was painting and your toddler was like painting a car or something, like his toy cars, and then you found him like naked out in the outside, and then you're trying to get your 2 teens to do their homework, and your oldest to help your daughter or something like that. And it was just like, yep, that is life.
It's the insanity. And I wasn't actually planning on sharing this with you today, but it just feels like the right thing to share. So I'm going to Ashley, I'm going to tell you a story because that is what I do. I'm a storyteller, and I'm going to tell you a story for your listeners today too, because I think that it is the biggest place that I've set in a long time. And just so you know, I'm super cheesy, but I also cry a lot. So if I cry on this podcast, is that a deal breaker?
No, you would not be the first one. And I've cried on here already too. So
okay, good. As long as we both might cry together. So yeah. I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
So in 2015, I ran a ministry. That's what I did. I ran a ministry for women. It was a nonprofit. And all we did was we tried to get women who go to church and who know a lot about Jesus and do a lot of Bible studies to step outside their comfort zone and to serve in their community right in front of them. Mm-hmm. So we fed a school. That's what we did 5 days a week. There was a school in Houston called Generation One Academy, and we served them free healthy sack lunches 5 days a week. And that was teams of women. There were these groups of women that came out of the woodwork, and we did that for 4 years, and we never missed a lunch. It was pretty amazing. We also helped out with the homeless people in our community. We helped out with people who had come from all over the world to get cancer treatment in Houston, and we provided meals for them so that they didn't also have to figure out how to eat dinner or just eat McDonald's all the time. And so we did this. We had a helpline where we would call girls who were trafficked on the internet and offer them a helpline through Rescue Houston, and it was pretty amazing. And that was my life, and my life was really big, and it was really full. I did a lot of speaking engagements at this time, and I still do that sometimes. And I wrote, and I spoke, and I ran this ministry, and I had these 4 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
And I was really, really busy. And everything was very practical. Life was in 10 to 15-minute increments, and it ran like a dream. So in October of 2015, I had the best news I'd ever had, and I'd been praying about it, and I was so excited when I found out that I was pregnant with my 5th child. And that sounds crazy to be excited, especially after I surprisingly and shockingly found out I was pregnant with my 4th child, Joshua. I thought that I was going to crawl into a pit and die because I did not want any more kids. And when I told my husband that we were pregnant with our 4th son, his reaction was less than awesome. But then when you have that baby and you just love them, it just sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it just makes you want one more. And so we had prayed about and talked about and planned for, and we were getting older, and I was almost 40, and let's just give this one more shot. Let's give Joshua, our youngest, just one buddy. And so we'll have the 3 big kids and the 2 little kids. And in October, I found out I was pregnant. And I was so excited. And I was so excited that my husband and I chose not to tell anyone except for my best friend, Jody. She was the only one who knew. And so we had this awesome secret where I would secretly go to the doctor's office and find out all the things you find out with a baby, like how big they are and how great it's doing and everything. And we finally told our 4 other kids on Christmas morning. We said there's one last present under the tree, and let's all open it together. And of course, it was that horrible moment where your kids shout, "We're going to Disney!" And you're like, no, we're not. But we're having a baby. And they were over the moon. They were so excited. Joshua, my youngest, was so excited. My husband and I were so excited. And we got the questions that you get when you have a big family, which is, so were y'all trying to get pregnant? Yes, we were. We are the crazy old people that want one more baby.
Yeah.
And so then we found out that we were having a boy. We were far enough along in our pregnancy that we found out we were having a boy. And so all my boys have J names. So we have Jacob and Jude and Joshua. And so this boy was going to be named James. And his middle name was going to be Cash, after Johnny Cash, because we're awesome like that. So we had decided that we were going to call this little guy Cash because that's the coolest name in the universe. So anybody who has a little boy named Cash, that was the best pick you could ever find. And so we posted it finally all over Facebook that James Cash Hooks was on his way, and we were so excited. And right up until January, my life was broken down into 10 and 15-minute increments where I did everything, Ashley. I did everything perfectly. I was the homeroom mom. I was running a ministry. I was making homemade dinners every night. I was shuffling kids through life. I barely had time to talk to anyone or anything, but I sure was keeping about 882 plates spinning. And I have to tell you, it felt really good. And I knew that I was going to be that mom that had a 5th baby and would bounce back in no time to doing what I do best, which is to make sure that ships sail completely smooth. And so on January 21st, 2016, my whole entire world fell apart. We gave birth to our son, James Cash Hooks, and he was already gone. And so after 12 hours of labor and all the other fun things that go with having a baby, and we knew he was gone when we went there. We found out on January 19th, and so we knew that we were going into labor and delivery to have a baby that was no longer with us. It was the day that every plate that I had kept spinning crashed to the ground. It was an absolute grief that I felt like that I could not get up from. And I'd had friends walk in those same deep and dark waters before, but I never really understood it because I'm just the girl that gets pregnant and has babies. And so here we sat with myself and my husband in this enormous, enormous pool of grief that I thought, in a minute, I'll hop back from this. And if I can just get busy, I can continue shuffling kids through homework and running a ministry and doing the things that I do and keeping ships floating on really, really, really easy water and carrying 1,000 pounds of mom guilt on my back, making sure that dinners are made and lunches are packed and outfits are picked out, and whether or not we ever have a big conversation with our kids doesn't matter, as long as all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. That's pretty much what I was hoping to get back to. And I couldn't get up. And so I spent like 3 days sitting on my big red chair where I do all of my work and all of my writing. And instead I just watched Dirty Dancing on repeat for 72 hours. Because it was happy, and it was Patrick Swayze, and he was shirtless, and we were learning how to dance. And that just seemed to be the only thing I could do. And then someone, my dear friend Shannon, brought me a pie, and I ate the whole thing sitting on the red chair watching Dirty Dancing. And I kept thinking, this is something I'm not going to be able to get up from. And so about a week later, when I'm trying to figure out my calendar and how to keep all my speaking engagements and how to keep everything going, my best friend Jody yelled at me, which I was like, people don't yell at people like me. People don't yell at the girl who hasn't showered in 5 days and who's crying and watching Dirty Dancing on repeat. You don't yell at girls like me. And she said, life has dealt you a blow and you are not supposed to get up. You're supposed to drown, and your life is supposed to break and change. And if you don't allow your life to break and change, I cannot be your friend anymore. And I was floored. And I think I actually said a lot of cuss words to her, not even bothered to get out of the car. I think I cussed her out, but whatever. We made it through. And she said, I need you to go to counseling once a week for you. I need you to cancel all of your stuff for you. I need you to quit running a ministry for you and for your kids, because you have 4 kids that you don't really even talk to. So we spent 2016, we, being me and Jesus, spent 2016 drowning in counseling. I spent a lot of time in pajamas. I spent a lot of time talking to my kids and watching them dive through about 800 pounds of grief as well, that our life had been wrecked and changed. And I spent a lot of time letting plates drop to the ground that I will never pick up again. My life is not in 10 to 15 minute increments anymore. It is filled with lots of long pauses and conversations with kids who are sometimes horrible, but I love them. And it is filled with lots of way too long bedtime routines. And it is filled with lots of crappy dinners because I would rather take the time to do other things with my people than to make sure that there is an amazing meal on the table. I would rather spend a lot of time talking at the table than I would making sure that I can take a picture of it to put on Pinterest. My life went from very fast to pretty darn slow. And I will say that the thing that ended up saving me, outside of Jesus and him letting me tell him 900 times a day how much I hated him for having failed me, which was really nice of him to do for a year, because my goodness gracious, I don't know how many other people cuss out Jesus on a daily basis when they pray, but I did that for 2016, and he seemed to handle it pretty well. But other than that, the thing that saved me, and I would love to sit here and tell you, was my husband, but he was drowning in grief as well. And so that's what happens when you have loss in your life, is that the person that is your partner may not be able to help you because they are hurting too. But the thing that saved me, absolutely, were my friends. Because for the first time in all of our friendship, I was the girl that was not okay. I was the girl that needed people to bring her dinners and meals and donuts and coffee, and to tell her that it was time to take a shower because she smelled pretty bad. I was the girl that needed you to just sit there, and if I cried, I cried, and if I didn't, I didn't. I was the girl who tagged along with you to Costco because I didn't feel like I could be alone. I was that girl. And it was my friendships with other women who I had been vulnerable enough up to that point to say that I'm not okay. And they had been vulnerable with me enough at that point to say at times that they were not okay, that saved me. It was a group of women that lived in my neighborhood, that none of us have anything much in common except for the fact that we are women and we are moms, and we were willing to walk to school together and encourage each other. That group of women saved me. They never quit texting me. They never quit calling me. They never quit inviting me, and they never quit stopping by. And so it became this enormous thing in my life that if you do not have that, if you do not have your tribe and your group of women, look to the left and the right of you. Quit looking for a bestie. Quit looking for somebody who wears clothes the way you do. It may be the girl who looks and acts nothing like you who is going to be your lifeline. God is good, and he is gracious, and he is willing to plant gifts in our life all around us. And sometimes we are looking in all the different directions, hoping that we find the perfect girls club. But I've found in my 41 years of walking on this planet, it is usually the people that are right in front of me that I'm supposed to be walking with. So I guess if there's anything that I would want to leave your listenership with, it is this. There are people all around you who are gifts. They're gracious gifts, and they are meant to sustain you and listen to you and hear you. And so if you are in the world of doing a million things right, don't worry, it will crash someday, and you will be left looking at the women who watched it happen. And if you have loved them well and let them love you well, they will continue to do so. There's this image that we have out there that women are catty, and some women aren't. I've met lots of catty women, and it just really makes me want to punch them in the face. But there are so many good women out there, and they're lonely just like us, and they're wishing someone would invite them over for coffee just like us, and they are cringing every time they get in the car and their 4-year-old says, I know you just got me buckled in, but I think I have to poop now. They are living the same life that we are living, and I would encourage all of us and all of y'all to not wait until life crashes to build your support system. And it's so much easier to have it already in place. If you don't have it, that will be my prayer for you from here on out, is that you can find it, because there are some crappy people in the world, but there are some really, really, really great ones too. So I guess that's my big thing. Find your
Yeah.
friends. They're out there.
No, that was really good. And thank you for sharing that super, intimate story of you and your husband and about James. And oh my gosh, like there have been women on this story or on this podcast that have shared their journeys with, whether it's infertility or, losing a child in womb. And it's just, it's something that I haven't experienced myself. And so just knowing, like you said, whether it's unexpected, because our first child was unexpected, but the minute that we knew that she was there, it was just like the best thing in the world. And then there was that one point where we went for an appointment and they couldn't find her heartbeat.
Yes.
And I'm so young. I think I was like 21. And so we went to the hospital because I had been bleeding and they couldn't find her heartbeat. And they were like, well, we can't find her heartbeat, so you're just going to have to go home and there's nothing we can do for you. And you just have to, it'll nature essentially will do its course is what they told us, and sent me home. And so then I told my sister, and she about lost her mind and was like, you need to go back up there. They cannot send you home. They cannot just tell you that and send you home. And so, which I had no idea because I was so young. And so the next day we went up there and, of course, the nurses are all, we're telling them about what happened to us yesterday. And they're like, whoever that was shouldn't have done that to you. And so there's a bunch of people, a bunch of nurses in the room, and they're searching for the heartbeat, and they're searching. And then finally, we got a heartbeat, and basically all the nurses were high-fiving, and what the nurse that found it went in the hallway and was like, we found a heartbeat, and everybody, just started yelling. And then at that moment though, you're just like, I didn't want this. The whole time laying there, my husband and I weren't married. We didn't want it, but we also didn't prevent it from happening. And knowing that there was life inside of me, and then, it being taken away in that moment was just it was heavy, just, and in no way compares to what you went through, but just that same thing of, once there's life, it's just this ultimate connectiveness inside of you that, as a mom is life changing. And, it's just an amazing thing. But so, yeah, anyways, I don't know where I was going with that. I was just thinking of that time, and I was like, oh, I just know.
No, I totally agree with you. I think the moment that we find out that you are a mom, and it is big.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, and this might seem like a stupid question, but when you were, so your friends were in your neighborhood, they were your neighbors. Yes. So how did you guys cultivate that kind of relationship where your friend, where Jody was could tell you how it is, and she could say all those things to you? How did you guys start that relationship between each other? Because I know that I'm friends with my neighbors, and because we're a young family, they're all older than us, but there's a lot of us that have neighbors, and we just don't step outside our homes. We all crave loneliness, or we have loneliness, but we crave friendship, but we just can't bring ourselves to step out of our homes and actually talk to people, or we assume because they dress different, or they're at a different age that they won't have anything in common with us, or that they wouldn't be interested in being our friends. So how did you guys start those relationships?
Well, first of all, I talk a lot, so that's always a big help. And we lucked out that we lived in our neighborhood. That actually was just a plus. We became friends outside of our neighborhood, and then realized, oh, holy crap, we all live right around the corner from each other. So that one did, the neighborhood did not create the friendship. The friendship, the neighborhood was a bonus. But here's where I live my life, and I've lived my life like this for the past decade. And this is, I don't know, it's kind of my rule of thumb. And for me, it has to do with Jesus, with being a Christian. So here's my rule of thumb. You invest high in people before you ever know if there is going to be a return on investment, which sounds really strategic and business-like, but what it boils down to is this, that I love people well because that is what we are supposed to do before I ever know if they are going to love me back. So when I meet people, when I meet you, for example, and even though we've only met over Skype and text message and email, you're Ashley Carroll.
Yeah.
You're my new friend. Like if you called me or texted me tomorrow and said, oh my gosh, I'm out of soap, will you help me? I'd be like, yeah, I'll figure out some way to get you soap, even though I live outside of Austin. But you love people well before you know if they are going to love you back. So that means that you know people's names. That means that if you are standing next to someone at school pickup, because y'all are all backdoor walkers, and I'm saying that in air quotes because that's what it was called at our school in Katy, Texas, then the people that you're all backdoor walkers with in 2015 or 2018 or 2016, it doesn't matter. Like, oh my gosh, you are here at this time all together, and that's a pretty big deal. And so you introduce yourself because you are standing next to someone and say, my name is Jackie and I live up the road. How old are your kids? And then when they tell you how old their kids are, because you have invested high, then you remember their kids' names. You remember their face. You remember if they are struggling. You remember whatever it is, and you talk to them the next day. And then you talk to them the next day because they are here on this planet to be loved, and so are you. And so you love big before you know if people are going to love you in return. So instead of waiting for someone to love you, because I spent lots of years, I would say my 20s were spent that way, you just become the friend that you want to have. And so you love big at the onset. You love big before you know if they're going to love you back. And here's the deal. Some people are not going to love you back. Some people are going to be rude. And is it okay if I say a cuss word on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I tell my kids this all the time. It is an awesome, awesome compliment if assholes hate you. If assholes hate you, that's an awesome compliment to you. Because you know what? There are assholes in this world. And if you're a good person, a lot of times they're not going to like you. So in saying that, there are people that are going to be assholes to you. And if they are, fantastic. More power to you. But outside of that small percentage of people, you love big, just on the onset, people will love you back because people are in need of love. So you be the friend that you want and just watch your life open up. And be the weirdo. Be the weirdo. Like yesterday, we had a grown-up kickball tournament at our house. I've never played kickball because I was the chubby kid in elementary school that got picked last. That was like, kickball is my own personal fourth grade nightmare. Right. But whatever. You know who I invited? Everyone I knew. And so did all my very best friends show up? Some. But I also met a whole lot of new people who were brave enough to come to my house and only be acquaintances with me. And so I got phone numbers, which is weird to do at 41 years old, to say to a girl, hey, can I have your phone number? And you just feel like the creepy weirdo. But you know what? It's because there are a million times over that I wish somebody would say that to me. Yeah. Say, I want to have like a friendship with you. So be the friend that you want to have.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that that when you said that, like, you know, you asked for their phone numbers, I always think of like making mom friends as like this awful, like speed dating. Like, do you go in for the number, or like, do they want to meet up like for a second date, or do you invite your kids again the next time, or like when do you move on to having dinner just by yourselves, you know? And then like neither of you like end up doing anything, so then you just stops there because, you know, one of you doesn't want to be awkward, and so, you know, you don't hang out anymore, and it's just this like crazy thing. And I don't know why it got that way, and I don't know if it's always been that way, or if we are just like socially awkward now, or I don't know. But yeah, it's hard, but I think that that's good that kind of just loving others big without any expectations of having that love reciprocated to you, because it's not all about us in the end anyway. Like, it's not all about fulfilling my needs, and the world doesn't owe me anything. And just serving others, I think, is huge.
Yeah, it's been a huge part of my life, and it changed my life drastically. Changed my life 10 years ago when I started living life in this direction of like, you know what? I'm going to quit listening to all the crap that women are catty and women are mean. Like, I'm just going to love people. I'm just going to love people the way that I want to be loved, and let's see what happens. And let me tell you, my life has been pretty darn good. I've had some pretty incredible people in my life because of that attitude. And it sucks sometimes. I will tell you that. Sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like loving anyone.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those are the days when people get to love me.
Yeah. So how did you and Jody, after she was like so harsh with you, like at in the moment, how did you guys work through that? Because like, I know that so much people are afraid of conflict, or like, if you do have a really good friend, it's like, do I tell her what I think or do I not? So like, how did you guys work through that after you guys kind of got into it a little bit?
Actually, we had to be on like a 2-hour drive that night together.
Oh my gosh.
I was speaking at a conference. So that was like that morning.
Ugh.
And we both were crying. It wasn't like this was like, I mean, we both were like pretty upset by this experience that we were having, but we had to be in the car together for 2 hours that night. That was already on the books. And when you have somebody who loves you as much as Jody loves me, you know that when they're telling you you've got to go to counseling, that was hard enough for them to say. And so I did. I made an appointment to go to counseling the next week. Like, I listened. And so that helped. But also, we had 2 hours stuck together in a car, like that same day. So you have to work it out. I mean, you have to, because we're adults, and you have to, and that's just it. And you have to get through all the awkward because you care about this person. It's a whole lot easier to never talk to people who make you feel uncomfortable for a moment again, and forget all the good things that happened before that. But we had a 2-hour car ride. So I'm always so thankful for that, because it could have gotten really awkward, but instead we had to like eat Funyuns and Twizzlers in a car ride for 2 hours. So there was no option but to make up. None.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the rule. If you argue with somebody, make sure that you have a road trip planned with on Tuesday.
That like forces you to have conversation. Yeah.
This part of your podcast might actually backfire for lots of people, but whatever.
I mean, we're just keeping it real, but
yeah.
So how did you and your husband and like your kids move forward from this? Just for maybe somebody who's listening who is experiencing this, like they know that they will be giving birth to a life that will be no longer outside of the womb, or like or they have already gone through this or just gone through this, and they don't know, like they're in that place where you were in your red chair. Like, what advice could you give to them about moving on, or kind of doing it to get healing as a family and healing as a couple?
I would say one of the best realizations that I came to during that time was that my life would always have a before and after. That event was not going to go away. That no matter how much I wanted my life back, I couldn't get it back. It was gone. Mm-hmm. My life would constantly have a line in it that would be before James and after James. And I could not remove that line. I could not pretend it wasn't there, because it was so overwhelming. It was not something that you get back up from. And we had been through lots of loss in our life, just never anything like that. So that was that. Recognizing that the line would always be there and life would always be broken into before and after. and having to recognize that that also was my kid's story too. That all of my children um, would have that line drawn in their life as well, that would be a before and after, and that I had to recognize that for them, that they will constantly, when they are 85 years old, there will be that line in their life of, and then this happened, and my mom changed, and my dad changed, and we walked through this really hard year as a family. Um, so I think, first of all, just acknowledging that that line can't be erased, no matter how much you want it to. And then I think, secondly, realizing that we're going to have to walk through it, that we cannot go around this grief. I tried. That we cannot somehow circumnavigate the grief. That the only way to get through it is to get through it. It doesn't erase the line, ever. It's just that you will get through it. Like January 21st for the rest of my life is the day that we had James. That never will change. That date will hit on the calendar every year. And I will always know what took place on that day. And so I think realizing and telling my kids, we're going to have to walk through this. Mom is going to have to walk through this. Like, I'm going to be really sad, and there's going to be days where I'm going to cry, and it's going to come out of nowhere. And just being really open and honest with them, and also calling all of their schools and telling their counselors, hey, you have kids walking through grief. Will you please touch base with them? Even if they tell you they're fine, because kids are resilient, but they're not untouched by the grief that's going on in their life. Yeah. And so letting it unfold, letting it be water too deep to swim in, letting myself drown, knowing that my husband was drowning, having those absolute conversations with each other, that when something like this, I cannot emotionally support you right now, honey, because I have nothing inside of me to give other than to myself, and I hate this right now. Like, I want to help you, but I can't. Yeah. And so just knowing all those things helped, and saying them, not just knowing them and looking for them, knowing them and saying them out loud, giving my kids opportunity to talk and cry, giving myself opportunity to talk and cry, and just knowing that it was never and this was a hard one, that it was never going to go back to the way it was before. So, for example, I was in a conversation the other day, and all these moms were talking about, with all good intention, how when their kids get home from school, they instantly make them start homework because they have so many activities going on in the evening that they've got to power through homework first, and then, barely have time to eat dinner. And they were saying this in the way that I used to say it, where it was my bragging rights, how much I could get done in a day. Yeah. And they're kind, wonderful people. And I said, gosh, y'all would laugh if you came to my house, because my kids get off the bus and they walk in, and I make them sit down at our bar, and I make them a snack, or I tell them to get their own snack, no matter how, depending on how annoyed I am with them at the point. But at some moment in there, I tell them they have until whatever time it is before they have to start their homework. And I force them, and my 13-year-old probably hates it, to talk to me. Like, I get to ask you questions about your day. I get to let our afternoon, before the calamity of it all hits with dinner and homework, start slow. Like, I get these precious moments before we all go in 5 million different directions, because that's all I want. I used to want all the boxes checked. This is all I want. I just want them. And so I think allowing my whole life to shift into that place and not ever try to go back, to become a slower person, that's okay. That has to be okay. That person that was taken away from you also took a lot of your baggage with them, and that it's okay to be the slower, hippy-dippy mom that wants to have meaningful conversations with their children, even when their children hate them. It's okay to be that mom. It's okay to be that.
How do you think that going from that, like, you said that you had everything planned in like 10 to 15 minute increments to now, like, I feel like it's less, just less stuff, man. Like, and that's kind of what we've done too. But how do you, moving on to this year, I'm like, we're just going to do less stuff. Like, I don't want to do all the things. But how do you think that that has changed you guys as a family? The dynamic, or like the way that you guys are doing life now in a slower version versus like the fast paced, like checking all the boxes, having everything planned out and all that. How do you think that's changed you guys as a family?
I think we always loved each other. Um, don't get me wrong. I think we absolutely, ferociously loved each other. But I feel like we now know each other. I feel like there are these times where we all just want to be together, and it's the knowing each other beyond the loving each other that makes those times happen. Like last night, it's time to go to bed. We've had this huge kickball tournament at our house with all these people and insanity. I really think there may have been 982 children. I don't know. And there was a water slide involved because we have these dear friends that always will bring over a water slide, which honestly makes life awesome. And we had a trampoline, which is basically like kids killing each other in a confined space after and then a kickball game. So it was wonderful and perfect. But we got done, we did dishes, and I made tacos for dinner. And so we ate like a late dinner and all sat down and talked. And so it's time to wrap up the day. And all my kids were like, can we watch something together? Like, can we all sit on the couch together? And it's them asking it more than it used to be me forcing it. We're not perfect. I think we just ended up in all of this seeing each other and knowing each other and loving each other and finding out that Parks and Recreation on Netflix is possibly the happiest of the universe. So we have watched it all. We've watched every single Parks and Rec starting last year. We watched it all summer. We watched it all this summer. We can't get enough of Leslie Knope. We've become people that quote Leslie Knope on a regular basis. So maybe that's the bottom line. Maybe Parks and Rec is the bottom line. I'm sorry. Did I say loving and knowing my children? Really, this is just a shout out to Parks and Rec. That's all.
So hopefully they could give you a shout out back, right?
Right. Maybe Leslie Knope in the TV land would be like, yep, they're a pretty happy family too. But that is really what it is. Just knowing each other and knowing what each other are going through. That's what it happened. Mom quit being this really strong statue. She became a person who broke. Yeah. And as hard as that was to let my kids see, there was nothing else but that. So they had to see it, especially when in the height of my grief, I did leave dinner one night to go sit in my car and cry. So that was possibly an odd moment for my children, but it is what had to happen.
Well, even though it's like seems odd or seems hard or it seems like they're seeing all your brokenness like laid out there and all its ugliness or whatever, I think it's just like a beautiful picture of teaching your kids like this is life. Like you're not going to be able to just like walk through and not be marked by it. You're not going to be able to walk through and not be changed by it. And things are going to like change, everything, your perspective, your feelings, your emotions. And just letting them see their mom go through that and then them feeling free to do the same thing. Because I feel like when you were talking about, how you had all these plates spinning, and I feel like I tend to do the same thing sometimes too, is it's like, if I stay busy, then I won't think about the things and I won't have the feelings and I don't have to acknowledge, the issue or whatever. If I just stay busy and, you keep going and, but at the same time, then it's like, well, I don't want my kids to do that. Like, I don't want them to just stay busy to avoid the feelings or the conflict or the struggle because, like a lot of people have said, there's like beauty in the ashes, yes. And so.
I agree. 100%.
Yeah.
And Parks and Rec. The best show ever. There you go. Can we get that in there 4 more times?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we try to watch that. And I think that we got sidetracked and we've been going down to that 70s show like marathon.
Did you just hear that? Did you just hear me gasp?
Yeah.
I may have, and I'm not going to say this with certainty, but I'm pretty certain that I may have watched the entire That 70s Show this summer. Maybe. Maybe. It's one of the best shows ever.
Yeah. We're that's exactly what we started it probably pretty close to the beginning of the summer, and then somehow we've made it like when you look back, you're just like, how did I watch that many seasons in that short amount of time?
Because it was so good. It's so fun to quote. Yes. Well, I'm so glad we have that in common.
Yeah, and then looking back at it, because like that show came out when we were younger for my husband and I, and so like we watched it when it first came out, and just realizing the jokes that we catch now and like the things that they say now, and I was like, man, I'm so glad either one that I didn't catch on to that, or two that it just like it didn't stick with me, because I was just like, man, like some of this stuff, I'm like, Mom, what were you thinking? But yeah, it's all good. So I have 3 questions that I want to ask you before I let you go.
Okay.
And the first being, if you could choose one most influential book that you've read, what would it be?
That is so crazy, because I would have answered, and I wanted to answer you. I have to be honest with you. I wanted to answer you something big with big titles and amazingness. But you don't get that from me. Oh no. So I have to be very honest with you. I read a book last summer that my daughter gave me. Oh my goodness, that just made me cry. Wow. And it is a book. It's a children's book. And it is, by children, I mean she was in 4th grade when she read it. And I have given this book to numerous women just walking through grief, honestly, and walking through like a hard part of their life. And it's not a self-help book. It literally is like a young adult children's book type thing. And it is called The Key to Extraordinary. And it is by, I hope I get this right, it's by Natalie Lloyd. And it is a book about a young girl who has lost her mom. And it is phenomenal. It was filled with hope for me. And I couldn't get enough of it. I loved it so much that I forced myself to only read 1 chapter a day. And it literally was like drinking water. It was the best, hands down, should I say this? One of the very best books I've ever read in my life. So The Key to Extraordinary, it's an easy read because it is a children's book. If you have like a 4th or 5th grade daughter, 6th grade, even 7th maybe, read it with him. My daughter and I reference it all the time, and it is beautiful. It is a beautiful, beautiful story of hope, and one of the things that I learned the most from it, because I felt like during that time period that I really wanted to crawl in a hole and never come out, and that I would be fine with that happening in my life, because I was just living through so much grief. And it was talking about how there is hope for tomorrow if one person loves you. And I could look up in my life and see so many people who did. And so there was hope because there were people who loved me. So it was big. It was big to me.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yes.
If you could empower women in one way, what would it be?
I would tell women to stop telling each other that they are fine and actually become friends. I would tell women, let me encourage you right in the space that you are in. You are where you are meant to be. Look to the left and the right. And the women who are next to you, no matter who they are, they're supposed to be next to you. And get to know them. Quit living in your silent hells where you drink coffee by yourself and say hi to the people that you see on a regular basis and invite them in. I would tell women that there is an amazing community waiting for them, and it is filled with women. There was a point in my life in the church where I realized that I was, for a season, not going to be invited to do ministry the way I wanted to and do life the way I wanted to, simply because I wasn't a guy. Nobody said that to me, but it was definitely handed to me in a lot of ways. And so I just went and did ministry and did life with women. And let me tell you something, we did some powerful stuff together. We fed a school for 4 years without missing a meal. Like, we loved on the least of these, to people who needed help and needed to be seen in a powerful, impactful, life-changing way. That is what happens when women start walking together and living life together. Amazing things can happen with the women who are standing to the left and right of you. They are put there for a purpose. And stop being fine. Stop being okay. Start making friends. It changes life. It makes everything so much more worth living.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I kind of, I feel like, or I'm challenging myself not to use that word, when somebody asks me like, how you doing? Oh, fine. As I feel like then that's where the conversation stops, is like,
Yeah.
when you just say fine. And then half of the time, one of you may not be fine, but because you said you were fine, they're going to be like, oh yeah, me too. Yeah. So hard. If you could tell your younger self one thing, assuming that she would listen, what would it be?
Golly, my younger self probably would not listen.
Yeah.
My younger self probably would not, no, definitely would not listen to my older self. But I would simply tell her, you are absolutely so smart and so brilliant. You have a million things to offer the world that have never been created before until you were created. Go live the big adventure. Quit thinking about what other people think about your big adventure. Own the bar in Arizona that you still talk about owning to this day. Travel the world. Go do the things that you think might be silly. I promise you other people will find it fascinating. I would just simply tell her to do the big things that are on her heart, because they will still be on your heart when you're 41 years old. You will just have a million more cards to shuffle to get them done. It doesn't mean they aren't doable, but write the book when the hours in your day are long. Live the story when there is plenty of time to live it. You can still live it when you're 41, and I would encourage anybody who is older to start living it if you're not, and start living out all those desires that are uniquely placed in your heart. But man, when you have time on your hands, it would have been a whole lot more fun to do them without having to explain to 4 children that we have to go open a bar in Arizona. They probably will not understand.
Yeah, so I need to know about this bar. You can't just drop that.
So I wrote a paper about this when I was in college, when I was 22 years old, and I was finishing up my senior year of college, and it was a psychology class. What would you do if you could do anything? And all these people were writing these amazing accounts of what they would do. And I was like, man, I think I would just open a bar in Arizona, because I love the desert and I love when it's hot. And I would just open a bar in Arizona so that I could just sit there and talk to people and gather people's stories. And so I always joke with my husband that, like, someday I'm still going to open that bar in Arizona. Unfortunately, that's probably not what the whole picture was about. The picture was about, I love gathering people's stories. I love hearing people's stories. And so I just figured the best way I could do it at that time was to be a bartender, because people always talk to bartenders.
Yeah.
No. So that was really it. It's a really simple thing.
But that's sort of the same thing that you're doing now, inviting like a bunch of people to your home to play kickball.
Yes.
And so same thing, just a little slight different atmosphere. Maybe
a little different location.
Yeah. Still some out. No, just kidding.
Yes, always. Thank you for acknowledging that part.
Yeah.
And like you didn't say that.
No, but thank you so much for being on. And I am super encouraged by just your guys' journey, and also your words about like friendship, because I know that it's just like, I feel like it's something that a lot of moms, especially myself, struggle with, like reaching out to people, or, having that mindset of giving instead of receiving, or being okay with giving and not having it reciprocated. And so you just had a lot of wise things to say, and I'm really grateful for you coming on and just like bearing it all, not even really knowing me, and just sharing your stories so that me and the listeners can benefit. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on.